Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate you taking the time to join us today.
Yeah. Just to get started, let's just kick off with introductions, and Jennifer, if you could lead us.
Hi everyone. Good afternoon, or morning, or evening, wherever you might be from. I'm Jennifer Clarkson. I am co-founder and CEO of Blend Me Inc. Blend is our consulting company that we started in 2013 to help remote companies improve their employee experiences. And my personal and professional interests are around life integration, organizational culture, and employee engagement. So that's why we're here today.
Awesome, awesome. Hello, my name is Kaleem Clarkson, and I'm the COO of Blend Me Inc. And really my passions are around engagement, events, and really about getting together as a team, and also work-life integration. So yeah.
And I'm Michael Boykin. I'm a marketing team member at Range. Been with the company for just about a year now, and we make team success software. Software that helps you stay in sync, focus on what matters, and get more work done with your team. And yeah, really excited to share with you the presentation that Kaleem and Jennifer have put together for us.
And real quick before we get started, we want everyone to be active in the chat. Michael's an awesome moderator. He's going to be moderating the chat rooms, and just to kind of keep this going quickly, we're just going to ask that everybody stay active in the chat.
Yeah, we'll pause for a couple of moments throughout the presentation if you have any questions about some of the topics that we've just covered, and I'll also be monitoring the chat for any questions that come up. So yes, please do engage.
So just kind of going over, the path that we're going to take today, just to give you an idea. We're going to start with the employee experience, and then kind of talk about what the engaged workplace looks like, the role of TLCs, and then of course, what your role is as a leader with telework companies. And then we're going to have some time. We want to hear about your experiences as consultants. We're lifelong learners, so we definitely want to hear about some of your experiences and some of your challenges, and maybe how you overcame some of those as well. So we're excited.
Yeah.
Okay, the employee experience. I'm actually just going to kick it off already and engage the audience with a question. Would anybody out there like to define what they feel the employee experience is? Does anybody have anything to share on that? Taking a guess. Anybody?
I can share a little bit of kind of what I think of, or at least what I thought of before looking through this presentation that you've worked on.
Okay.
I mean, everything from how a future employee might find out about your company and apply to work at your company, and the hiring process they go through, all the way to promotion and advancement within that company. And then, of course, I think on a more day-to-day basis, to what extent they're engaged with their team members. Are they aware of what's going on their team, and what the goals and the mission of a company happen to be? And then kind of, are they having a good time at that company? Are they learning? Are they having fun with the work that they're doing?
Excellent.
Yeah, and I see Carrie had a little comment there, and
Andrea.
Carrie Worth.
Yeah,
Okay.
was it your daily?
You're all hitting it on the head, actually.
Yeah, your daily feeling about the place you work and your relationship to your colleagues, and Andres, that which attracts and retains an employee.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think that actually a collection of all of those would be a good definition. We here we have, if you aren't familiar with Gallup, it's one of the largest data analytics companies in HR and management consulting. And Gallup sort of explains the employee experience as the complete journey that an employee goes through. So given all of your responses, that sort of, you hit it right on the head. The Gallup definition says that the employee experience includes everything from major milestones and personal relationships to technology use and the physical work environment. It's the big picture that ties together all of your efforts to attract, engage, and develop your employees. And then the life cycle, it includes 7 stages that employees must get right for consistent employee experience. So attract, hire, onboard, engage, perform, develop, and depart. As you can see, that's start to finish, the sort of complete life cycle of an employee's experience. And today, for the purposes of today's discussion, there were several points there, but for today, we will focus on engage and perform, on just 2 of those.
So thumbs up in the chats who has read this book. Start with why. Let's get some comment activity here. So the reason why this is not a reference to the book, I know the slide's a little confusing, but I really wanted to suggest this book to leaders. Again, we're hoping that there's a good amount of managers here, even if you're not management, maybe you will be someday. But with all initiatives, and I think this is just a general important point that we try to talk about with Blend when we're talking with organizations. All initiatives have to have a really great purpose. Everyone gets tied down with initiative fatigue at jobs. I mean, it happens all the time. There's initiative here, initiative there. If you don't have a really great purpose that's going to inspire people and follow you, your initiative is kind of starting off on the wrong foot. So it was just a really great play on words. It's like, oh, this is also a great book. But for us, starting with the why are we talking about the things that we're talking about, right? Why are you going to go back to your superiors or your supervisors and say, hey, I want to implement some of these things? And there's 2 major points. One, it maximizes effectiveness and productivity. That's number 1. And then number 2, it reduced costs associated with employee turnover and absenteeism. So with every initiative, we always try to attach the initiative with the bottom line and have metrics that actually are measurable. So these are the 2 things that we're really talking about today as to why we're doing this.
And we're going to start with the concept of the importance of the engaged workplace. A place where people come to work knowing what is expected of them, feeling connected to the people that they work with, and working in an environment where they want to be. So there's three important points there. And I know when I read that, you think, oh yeah, that makes sense. That's pretty commonsensical. What we have experienced is that the challenge for companies is being intentional, creating an environment, an engaged workplace type of environment, because it requires planning and consistency. It is hard work. And it is a strategic commitment for long term. It's not a short-term goal. And so we try and hope that managers can go away, and the takeaway being that they want to create an environment that is an engaged workplace. So for those 3 points specifically, just to dig in a little bit deeper on the three points there, why is setting expectations important with your employees specifically? Because it establishes a baseline for measuring performance. So you want to have those one-on-one conversations where you're setting goals, talking about your accomplishments, talking about their challenges, things that they might need to work on. Setting expectations, though, as Kaleem had mentioned, are metrics that you can measure. And so it's always good to have that baseline. And then knowing what is expected allows employees to commit and deliver results. You do not want to have employees not being real clear on what they need to do. So making sure that the expectations are there is important. And then expectations also help employees understand how their efforts fit into the big picture. One of the big things that we see with engagement is, especially in larger companies, everybody's doing their day-to-day tasks and they're not really sure on how their specific role fits into the big picture and how it's having that sort of overall impact on the company. So being able to pinpoint for your employees what it is that they're doing on the daily basis to how in the big picture it's making an impact on the overall company is it's an engagement technique. And then the second one was feeling connected to the people at work. This is a big one. It's about having a sense of belonging and connection to the people that you're around every day and the work that you're actually doing. So people want to know that what they're doing is important. Also, establishing friendships at work helps peers build trust, and it does lead to collaboration and teamwork. So obviously getting along and making friends at work is important for engagement. And that third point, creating a healthy work environment, it's a place that people want to be in. So having alignment with your personal values and alignment with the company's mission is always pretty critical. It's what gets people out of bed in the morning, getting jazzed to go to work and be with people. I think it's also very important that inclusion and support in the workplace drives significant relationships, which then drives commitment to the company. So as managers, you want to make sure that that's the sort of environment that you're creating for your employees. And of course, employees want to know that they're being supported and their efforts are being supported by their peers and their managers. So that's sort of just a couple of different examples of why the engaged workplace is important.
So to kind of talk about, we want to have statistics, right? We want to go back and have some statistics to kind of back up some of your reasonings for starting this wonderful new initiative that everyone is going to go back and implement, right? So the first thing we're going to talk about is look right there, 550 billion a year. That's a pretty strong number. Disengaged employees cost 550 billion a year. I mean, I don't have to say any more to that. Like, it's a pretty strong number. As far as how productive you are, or profitability, you can see 21% more profitable. And then this one is interesting to me, like customer service. Highly engaged businesses, you have a 10% increase in customer service ratings. I mean, that's a really big deal as far as talking about external stakeholders as well. And then, of course, a 20% increase in sales. I mean, who doesn't want that? So here are just some statistics to kind of support that. So now I'm kind of moving on to, well, what's the return on investment outside of some of those things? And you can kind of see here kind of the pyramid of it, starting from the bottom, kind of the reverse pyramid. It starts off with you have higher service. We saw that, higher service and quality and productivity, which then leads to higher customer satisfaction, which then leads to increased sales, higher levels of profit, and then of course, hey, higher shareholder returns. So we really feel like we have enough data here for you and for everybody else to justify why this is important, to justify why moving forward with initiatives like this is important.
And can you skip back to that, Kaleem? Just wanted to add that
absolutely.
If anybody does have a chance to read Employee Engagement 2.0, that book, it's a very short book, but it's a good read, and it's super helpful. But it perfectly illustrates how engagement can be put into tangible terms. I know that for some, the idea of engagement is a wonderful concept, but it's sometimes hard to grasp how you turn engagement into dollars, into that return on investment, that ROI. So that just a suggestion that book's a good read, and in this slide here, it shows you how you can make engagement be a tangible turnaround for your companies.
Yes, thank you very much. And to answer Timothy's question. I'm trying to look at the chat. I like what's happening here. Yeah, we'll make a little bit of an edit to our slides and have a more concise book list and reference list for everybody. I think that would be a really, really good piece of information for everyone. So Timothy Hudson, thank you very much. You get a gold star. There was one other thing I kind of wanted to mention about those statistics. The employee experience is kind of I don't want to say a newer term, but we're seeing it a lot more in the industry. And to me, just personally, this is just my opinion, I kind of feel like the employee experience is a little bit more clear than employee engagement. I mean, I know it's all of it, but I know a lot of agencies have been using employee engagement forever, but I just kind of feel like the employee experience does have more of a direct connection. So you may want to consider that in your literature. So some more statistics here. Here we go. Yes, remote work is wonderful. We're on top. We love it, but you have to actually pay. The fundamentals of engagement actually apply universally. It's not just for remote people as well. It's also co-located organizations as well. But as you're managing a remote team, there should be some extra effort because, again, you don't have some of the nonverbal communications to work off of. So oftentimes remote employees feel excluded. And here's some stats that kind of talk about how that they're feeling. 1/3 of the global workforce has reported isolation and loneliness is a big problem. And then lack of face time with coworkers was another issue. If you see over here on the right, you see 2/3 of remote workers aren't engaged. That's a pretty eye-opening statistic. We also have seen the statistics of how remote work is improving. But you can just kind of see how some of those. I'm sorry, I got channeled by some new statistics with Teresa. So thank you, Teresa. We'll definitely have to look at some of those new updated stats. They are always doing research all the time in Gallup. We can't even keep up with them. So really appreciate that. This chat is becoming valuable, by the way. I'm impressed.
One thing, Kaleem, before we move on, one thing I wanted to add there was just, remote work and working from home, working remotely has never been kind of a full-time part of my job. I've never done that full-time, but it's been a part of my normal work life for maybe the last 5 or so years. And I've spent the majority of my time at one of my last companies working from home. One of the things that I struggled with a lot was feeling a little bit, I'd start to feel a little bit disconnected from my team as I'd spend sometimes 3 or even 4 days out of the week working from home, even though we had a local office in San Francisco. And one of the problems that came out of that was just the opportunities for miscommunication. You are constantly engaging via email or on Slack or Google Hangouts, whatever chat you might be using, excuse me. And as a result, you may read into things that don't warrant reading into. And I often found that all that I needed to do was go back into the office or hop on a video call with someone and actually have a conversation face to face. And it makes a world of difference. So I think when you start struggling a little bit with any form of isolation or feeling like you're a little bit left out on your own, remembering just to re-engage with your teammates and strengthen that connection that you've started developing already.
Definitely. Good point.
Thank you, Michael. That's a very good point.
So I just want to pause here real quick on why therapeutic lifestyle changes matter. Wanted to ask the audience, is anyone familiar with therapeutic lifestyle changes or want to take a guess at what that might be? Yep. Cabin fever is real. Okay, so here's just a list of some of examples of what therapeutic lifestyle changes are. And as you can see from the list, these are definitely things that if you're not intentionally trying to take action on them, we can easily forget to do some of these when we get busy, life gets in the way. So it's more about self-care and how that's super important. And tying it into the why in the workplace though, you can see here, lifestyle factors contribute to and are treatments for fostering individual and social well-being and for preserving and optimizing cognitive function. And cognitive function is important in every aspect of our lives, work and home life. In your organizations, you need employees showing up with maximum cognitive function every day. And this is when they're the most productive. So, and productive employees we know contributes to the bottom line. So practicing self-care does lead to increased cognitive function and higher performance in your employees. For the purposes of today's discussion, in that list, we were going to focus on relationships. And again, answering the why question, why are relationships important? They lead to happiness, which supports the quality of life. Happiness contributes to all sorts of positivity in life. But it does contribute to the quality of life and therefore increases your cognitive capacity. And people, humans, are interdependent. Neuroscience research will show that it's actually a primal need for people to depend on others. And our very species requires personal connections. And then the third point here, it's just an unfortunate that in our current reality that we are spending less time with others, more so than we had in the past. Whether it's too much reliance on social media or a lot more screen time now that technology allows us to do so much, less community involvement, those sorts of things. So it is showing the positive aspects of why relationships are important, as opposed to this, where these stats are a little bit scary actually, but it shows that when there is a lack of relationships in your life, in your employees' lives, it can lead to loneliness and isolation. And Teresa, if you got some new stats, let me know.
Teresa's the researcher.
This actually study, the loneliness and isolation has come a long way. The studies on this have started a long time ago, and they actually started with former military and elderly people who were found to be alone a lot, and being in an isolated situation leading to loneliness. They found having emotional, physical, mental impacts on people. And now they're seeing that this isn't just limited to elderly and former military, that those impacts happen to anybody who is lonely and isolated, that those negative impacts can actually impact them as well.
The stat that really sticks out to me on this one is the very first one. It's just, when you see that, it's just like, wow, it you hear people say, oh, I'm lonely or whatever all the time, but you don't really, when you see as bad for your health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day, I mean, first off, how can you inhale that much smoke in a day? And then secondly, like, it's really bad. And then as dangerous as being an alcoholic, like really think about, like, that is pretty powerful. So it was just a really big eye opener when, you know, when we were doing research.
And this is actually an important distinction. So we do like to point out that there's a difference between being alone and what defines loneliness. So if you take a second and think about it, Michael took a lot of seconds.
Yeah.
Being alone is the state of being. And so when you think about it, it's being isolated for a moment. It's as opposed to loneliness is an emotional response to one's circumstances. Loneliness tends to be longer term. Loneliness leads to depression, and some of those health impacts that we just saw on the other slide. So I think it's an important distinction when we're talking about remote employees or location independent people in general, because one of the major benefits of remote work is the fact that you can work away from an office space and be away from the distractions. So you want to be alone just to get your job done. But that is not the same as feeling lonely. And so the loneliness is where sort of the engagement comes into play and making extra efforts to have positive relationships in your life and that sort of thing. So I just think that's sort of an important distinction when we're talking about loneliness, that it's not the same thing as being alone.
Yeah, it's a very important distinction.
So what can you do as a leader, your role as a leader or even a colleague? What are some of the things that you can do to kind of combat this isolation? And the first thing that we're going to kind of talk about is more from a best practices and procedures angle here. And the first thing, and there's a ton on communication. We didn't go deep into this, but communication is critical. Like, there's a few points that you want to just take from this, and this is definitely one of them. So communication is imperative for remote work. You don't have a lot of nonverbal communication data points to come in. And so it's critical for you to be able to communicate right, preferably asynchronously. We've been trained in our brain to kind of do this instant and direct communication, but there is a good amount of information on there about how remote companies, use asynchronous communication to be more effective. It allows work-life integration. It allows for people to think about their thoughts before they respond. GitLab has a really great, wonderful blog post on asynchronous communication, which we'll have to add to the notes again. The other thing is like remove divisive language. This is something that I talk about that is very in the moment, it's very minor. Us versus them, remote versus HQ. Oh, we're having lunch at HQ today in the Slack channel. Hi, everybody. Where are you working from today? Are you in the office? I'm heading to the office. A lot of those types of comments, that they don't really seem like a big deal, but they constantly kind of re-support or the differences between one or the other. So trying to remove that divisive language is an important piece. This is the other thing. Like, as a leader, there's a lot of bad information out there today, and we've seen some recent bad information in regards to the no more remote work at the federal level. It's our responsibility, and another reason why we're actually doing this webinar, as leaders in this field, it's our responsibility to educate people about the misperceptions. No, we're just not sitting home doing anything. Yes, I'm in my pajamas, but I've been in my pajamas for 10 hours and I've been working. What have you been doing? You've been in traffic for 2 hours. There's a lot of different, there's a lot of information out there, and it's our role as leaders to educate people so that they are more comfortable with it. That also includes external stakeholders. That's very critical. Internal and external people need to be educated more in the field. So that's an important one. Provide resources for in-person networking opportunities. Again, that's from the top. Provide resources for alternative work locations. We try not, we love co-working spaces. We do a lot of work at co-working spaces, but there was a comment by a group that we consulted with where they said, work wherever you feel the most happy and the most productive, which I thought was a really cool statement. It's co-working spot is not for everybody, but Work From is a really good piece of software that you can kind of just search. It's kind of like the Yelp for working remotely. It has like hotels, coffee shops, all sorts of places. It's a pretty cool project, and they have a really cool API. Obviously, WeWork, and Michael, do you want to talk about Impact Hub and Nodal?
Yeah, there were just a couple of other co-working locations that I came across and wanted to just present some alternatives for people. I think Notel is more popular abroad outside of the States. And so just wanted to keep in mind people who might be joining us today from different locations in different countries. And yeah, like you said, I think for providing resources for in-person networking opportunities, like meetups are free, and they're a great place to meet people who are interested in the same professional or even personal interests that you have. But also as leaders of a team, providing even financial resources for people to attend more formalized events, such as I think it's Dev Guild puts on some different product marketing and also some developer and engineering events that cost a little bit of money to attend, but one, they're educational, and two, for people who are working remotely or are distributed full-time and are not near a local office. It's a great way for them to build their own network within their community regionally, and it's super helpful for creating connections outside of the connections that they're creating at work. Yeah.
And I think I'll add that just in general, co-working, if you do work from home full time, that's when that cabin fever sets in, Andreas. I get it. So just having a place to like go have a coffee, even if you don't know any of the people around you, they're all sort of in the same boat. So co-working spots or even coffee shops or whatever is your preference, just to sort of get out there and mingle and have conversations and build what we would say have connections and build relationships even with people you don't know. It's very helpful.
Absolutely. And then just one last point on, go ahead, Michael.
Let's say Angelica just shared a point that her team sends a small value like gift card to some of their distributed teammates on their coffee meeting days, which is a really good idea, because one of the things you get by being in a co-located office, typically headquarters, is that there are perks of being in that office that people who are not in that space share. And sometimes that's going and grabbing coffee with your team, and that coffee is paid by the company, that people who are working from home or working from a co-working location on a regular basis don't get the benefit of. And why is that? Why should they not be included there? It's really
excellent point.
So just to let you all know, we're going to take every suggestion that you guys took in these chats, because this is some good stuff. I've never heard of the digital Starbucks card. I mean, coffee meeting, that is just such a great idea. And Angelica, we'll give you some credit on that. How about that? We'll give you some credit when we tell people that idea. The one last thing I did want to talk about in regards to the resources, the financial resources are critical. But the other thing is also providing, it's sometimes difficult, especially if you're working hard, it's sometimes difficult to know where to go. So providing, we've consulted with companies where they've given people $2,000 technology stipend that they can use for whatever they want and do all this great stuff, but they just couldn't find the places for them to do those things. So I just wanted to kind of clarify, resources is multiple things, not just financial, but maybe having somebody that could actually find, put together a directory of some sort. And then the last thing about home offices, because we want to give people time for questions. I know we started late, we're running late on time here. Home offices, the remote work does save companies money. It's true, but it's not free. It's critical for the organization and you as leaders to make sure that everyone has the right equipment to work in their situation. As you could probably see, I have a green screen behind me. Like that was an intentional piece to make sure that if we're on a client call, that basically the background isn't showing. So there's a lot of little things. I have a desk elliptical, standing desk. It's really, really important to make sure that the home office is set up. So just because we're cutting short on time, I'm going to fly through these real quick. For one-on-one meetings, so combating isolation. So as a manager, one-on-one, have to commit to consistent one-on-one, face-to-face conversations. And face-to-face means we can use video. Preferably, you pre-schedule these on a recurring, using recurring dates in Google Calendar or whatever calendar system you're using, because it shows that you're committed. Like, just think about the psychology behind that. You get a new employee and you're like, hey, we're going to have our check-ins, and you send out the recurring meeting for the whole year. It's like, wow, they're really going to check in with me a lot. I don't understand why 360 reviews are not used everywhere. I'm sure there's a ton of research on how invalid they are. But being able to provide feedback is a really critical piece for remote people. Like in the office, back to kind of like what Michael was talking about, in the office, you can provide kind of, quick feedback here and there, and talk with your colleagues about, oh, I think, our manager's doing great. In a remote setting, you might not have that ability. So just be intentional about thinking about ways for your employees to be able to give feedback back and forth to everybody, not just manager down, not just to the manager, but for the team as well. And then try to get to know your team members on a personal level. This is great. Donut's a great tool. We use it for Slack, where it automatically matches you with somebody based on a certain thing. And then doing is Icebreaker another software, Michael? It's very similar to Donut.
Yeah, so the name is clear. It's Icebreaker Questions, but it's a free app that Range actually created. We have team building questions built into our daily check-ins in our product, and they're super useful and really helpful for building connections with teams. And so we kind of took about 300 of those questions out of the product and created its own little app for teams to use when they're starting a one-on-one, starting recurring team meetings, doing a team building exercise or offsite. Sometimes it's hard to come up with those questions, and so they're about 325 for you created. Yeah.
Very cool.
Wow, that's super useful. We definitely need to take a look at that. That seems like very useful. And then, so what can you do as far as managing a team? We try to break these down in 3 different areas: best practices and overall procedures. You as a leader doing one-on-one meetings, and then now as a team, how can you help that? Schedule regular virtual team meetings. I mean, again, the more times you put your face on this camera with your team, the better you are. The more engaged a person can feel. And video is critical. We all know we have to brush our teeth and we could look whatever. Well, it's not about that. It's about another non-verbal communication. You can see I'm talking with my hands here. I'm talking with my hands, so it's really critical with that. Schedule and budget for in-person team retreats. That is very critical. Has anybody read the book, The Year Without Pants? It's another really good one. Basically, the guy follows around WordPress, and what WordPress Automatic does, Automatic is the WordPress company, they actually have a retreat where they send the whole company to Florida, and you room with different people every time you do a project. Obviously, you don't have the money for that, but everyone doesn't have the money for that, but they also do small team meetings outside of that where a team is provided with funding to be able to do that. One remote, all remote. This one I am really passionate about this one. Like, this one to me is something that I've personally struggled with, being remote at times. And the hybrid model is definitely the most difficult. And I'm sure a lot of you who are on the call are dealing with a hybrid model. If you're having a conference call in a conference room, just think how that makes the person feel who's coming in on Zoom. You have the whole table sitting around and I know Owl Labs is great. Love the Owl, by the way. Love Owl Labs. I'm giving them a little love. The Owl is definitely an improvement. You know, it's definitely an improvement from all the people sitting around the conference room and you're on the video screen. But everybody do the Zoom together. There's no reason for you. It's treating everyone equally. And I think that's the most important part is equality, treating everyone the same. And then have fun with it. You got to have some fun with it. I mean, we're definitely, again, I think, was it Angelica or Teresa had a good idea? Angelica had a good idea. Those are the fun parts. I've been a part of a virtual gift exchange, which was way more fun than I thought. We had some beverages. Some people had, you know, coffee. Some other people had a little something extra in their beverage. I did. And it looked like it ended up being one of the most fun, and I didn't have to drive. So it was a really, really, really cool experience that we had. So just try to have some fun with it. Back to kind of like the TLCs as an employee. So some of you are probably not managers. So what can you do as an individual? It's going back to the TLCs. You got to take care of yourself. It's self-care. Find, you know, you got to take some responsibility on yourself. And I know it's hard, but schedule time for exercise. Clean up your home office. Schedule co-working times. Go outside. Find a co-working space or regular cafe. Like do something on your own. And as far as, you know, we have to plug ourselves here. Here's a suggestion. We have Remotely One. It's a Blend Me product. It's a community. And basically it's a community for location independent professionals. Hopefully some people on this call are actually from the Remotely One community. If you are, give me a yes in the chat. I would love to see you. But basically, you know, as Blend, we created this because we realized that isolation was a really big problem. And pretty much we said we need to try to fix this. So we have a Slack community, a private Slack community. We have an app that's getting ready to launch where you can build relationships with people, schedule meetings, one-on-one meetings. We have events and a newsletter. So that's it for our shameless plug. And kind of ending everything. It's effective managers take the responsibility of engaging the workplace. You have a ton of different roles, and I'm sure there's a lot of different things that your supervisors are asking you to do, but this is a major role. It's, you know, you've heard the stat that, you know, people don't quit jobs, they quit managers. It's totally true. So if ending this presentation, it's definitely our jobs as managers and leaders to kind of go in there and make sure that we're focusing on engagement all the time, and we're making sure that our employees are happy and engaged. And that's all that we kind of have. So I would love to kind of open it up. Michael, do we want to open up the microphone? I would love to hear some people's experiences on some things, some thoughts about the presentation. It looks like we have about 10 minutes left until 2. Let's hear some people. Let's hear what you have to say.
Yeah. I'll go ahead and allow whoever wants to speak. You're all being, just changing the settings. If you want to just chime in, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask some questions, or if there's noise around you, feel free to ask them in the chat, and I'll go ahead and share them with the group and we can respond to them.
There's nothing wrong with uncomfortable silence, by the way.
Yeah. I guess one question that I might ask is kind of, at Range, we talk a lot about psychological safety, and I've written a blog post or 2 on the topic. I kind of wonder, where does that come into some of the discussion that we've had today, from your perspectives, Jennifer and Kaleem?
Psychological safety.
I would say that sort of would fit into the
Well, first off, I'm sorry, does everybody know what psychological safety is? Good point. Thank you, Kaleem.
Go ahead and define it, Michael.
Your team, especially as a leader, this is important, but it's being in a work environment where everyone feels comfortable speaking up without fear of being chided or reprimanded or ridiculed. And, just believing that everyone has good intent. And having that trust in your team, knowing that you can be open and vulnerable and share, and that's going to not just be welcome, but also reciprocated by your teammates and your colleagues. At least my personal definition. If you,
I think you captured it pretty good. I would say that in terms of today's presentation, that would fall into the engaged workplace idea, where if you're creating as managers, you're working toward creating that sort of ideal engaged workplace, then specifically where we had said that finding that safe place, making connections with peers and managers, and then building those relationships along with the environment where people want to be in it, then if you're doing that, then I think that you're probably taking care of psychological safety. Where, like you said, showing vulnerability is okay. No question is a dumb question sort of idea. Employees need to be able to feel safe at work with all of their ideas, all of their questions. And I think when that is the environment that you're in, then it does lead to higher engagement and therefore higher performance. So it's definitely a very important point to make sure that your employees do feel that safety in their environment that they're in.
yeah,
Because there's no quicker way to get a disengaged employee if they are not feeling safe in their area.
Yeah, and I'd say one really small step that helps to build this, and something that we do at Range, is having check-in and check-out rounds during every meeting, especially recurring meetings. So at our all hands on Monday, a quick check-in round with everyone on the team. How are you feeling? What's on your mind as you're going into work throughout the week? As anxiety builds about deadlines or projects and tasks, like having a space and making space in a meeting to discuss just the fact that we are all humans and not just our output in the office is super important. And it makes it easier for direct reports to come to their managers and their leaders to talk about things that they might be nervous about, or personal matters that might be going on, because they believe that there's that trust and concern about them as a person and not just as a resource to help the company achieve its goals.
Sure. Definitely.
Yeah, that's definitely good. Anyone else want to talk about like any experiences that you've had that, maybe we could learn from? Any challenges that you've had, or actually some victories? I'd love to hear. So I know that there's some people on here. I'd love to hear what you would have to say.
Looks like Teresa had added some good stuff. The bi-weekly, that's similar to what you had, Mike, the bi-weekly, whatever you want to talk about type of meetings.
Yeah, that was a really good idea. Along with the virtual coffees and yeah.
All right, any other questions? Just kind of got a, ooh, here we go. Carrie.
Yeah. What about introverted team members who don't necessarily want to engage? Thank you, Carrie.
Yeah, that's a very interesting, oh, sorry, Michael.
It is a really interesting question. And I myself am quite introverted. One of the ways that, I have to go back to check-ins again, one of the ways that you help people speak up, in particular in meetings, there's some research that had been done that Dan, one of our co-founders, has talked about a couple of times before at Range, and that the earlier people speak in a meeting, and particularly at the top of a meeting, the more likely they are to engage and speak throughout that meeting as you go on. And I'm someone who, once a meeting gets started and I haven't quite found my footing, it becomes less and less likely that I'm going to engage. And so just by having a check-in, which does not have to pertain necessarily to the topic of the meeting that you're having in that moment, makes it a lot more likely for people to engage. And that's very much the case for me. That's one way I'd say that you can help engage some of the more introverted people on teams like myself.
Good tip.
Yeah, another thing that I would suggest too, and we've kind of mentioned this, is that, you know, everything doesn't have to be, you know, asynchronous communication. Again, it's really a great tool because it allows people to respond and participate at their own rate. Now, there's a difference between being an introvert than being disconnected. You know, if you're never responding to any comments or anything like that, I mean, that's not a, well, I'm an introvert situation. You're just not, you're not engaged, you know. So to be able to provide opportunities for people to kind of, and that's what's so great about it, is to respond when you feel the most comfortable. Personally, I'm sure you could tell I'm not an introvert, but I've worked with a lot of introverts, and a lot of times it's mostly a situation where they want to think a lot of times. Like, you know, my colleague was like, no, it's I'm introverted, yes, but I'm processing. Like, I need to think about what it is that I want to say. So that the asynchronous communication, the more opportunities you provide for that, the better off you'll be for introverted people. Any other questions? I think that's pretty good.
Yeah, agreed. Thank you all for the participation throughout. This is one of the most lively chat rooms I've ever been a part of during a webinar. It's really great to see all those questions and ideas coming through.
Now, can we copy, because I've been on Zooms before where the chat just disappears once you end it.
Yeah.
Will you be able to copy and paste that?
Yeah, I see a save.
Google Doc. Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Carrie. We appreciate that.
Yeah, and I've got the chat.
We'll definitely put together that list of books, the resources.
Yeah. I'd say a couple that come to mind immediately: teaming, certainly culture code. But yeah, a couple of places I'd start. All right.
Thank you all so very much.
Yes, everybody.
I want to thank you, Michael, for having us.
Thank you both.
We'd love to come back again sometime, hopefully. And we just really
join
appreciate.
remotely one.
Yes.
Join remotely one. Don't forget, and check out that dope software by Range.
Thank you.
All right, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Bye.